Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to make the orchids with the fringed centers that I showed in my last video all about how to fringe paper. The body of the orchid is going to be made with this really thin 2mm quilling paper strips. It's from a company called JJ Quilling out of the UK. I also am going to be, like I said, fringing some paper for the center, and this is a much thicker paper. This is about 3/8 of an inch. It's a pale yellow from Quilled Creations. I'm going to link all of these papers down below in the description box, so don't worry about that if you missed any of that info. We're going to be rolling our strips, so I'm using my Savvy slotted quilling tool from Quilled Creations, but you can use what you wish. I have some Elmer's glue wall in a needle nose container. I'm also going to be using a small amount of tacky glue because these are going to be sort of a three-dimensional flower. I'm going to need a wax covered board to build a little bit on, and I'm going to be using my quilling mold. I'm going to be using it upside down because I'm going to make these sort of a domed flower. I do have a damp towel here to wipe off my fingers if they get especially gluey. And I also want to make sure you grab a small pair of scissors. I left that out by accident, but you're going to need that as well. So for the flowers, we're going to be using two different colors of quilling paper. This lighter color here is a color called Cerise. Again, I'll link to that down below. These strips are a little bit shy of 18 inches long. I tore off one end because I'm going to be gluing that later. Remember, torn edges make a smoother transition when you're rolling your quilling paper. When you're gluing it, it makes a nice smooth seam. And all I'm doing is rolling this end to end. It can be a little tricky to roll really long strips of super thin quilling paper. So you notice that every once in a while I kind of straighten it out again, go real slow. Push that off, and at this point we're going to let it open a bit in our hands. I like to not let it open all the way, but I want it to stay even. So I found if I kind of keep my fingers on it and just sort of sandwich it a little bit between my hands, I can really control how quickly that coil opens up, and it makes it a little bit more even. So you're going to apply a little bit of glue and get that sealed. And now all we're going to do is, between our two fingers, give it a good squish. And I like to, with the hand I'm not squeezing, kind of hold the center just to make sure that the center of the coil stays in the middle of the shape. That's personal preference. As long as you just kind of squish the heck out of this top to bottom, that is the shape that you're looking for. For the next part of the orchid, we're going to do a very similar process, but we're going to be making two of the same shapes using a different color quilling paper. This one is a little bit more of a purplish shade. It's called Loganberry. Again, I tore off one of the edges because that's the one I'm going to glue at the end, and roll it all the way to the end, just like last time. And once you get to the end, you're going to gently remove your coil from the tool and let it open up in your fingers again. You're looking for it to be about the same size. So just gently, nice and even, and glue the end when you're happy with that. Very small amount of glue because these papers are so thin, the glue really easily kind of can go to the outside and give you those little glue dots. If you really hate that, you can always use clear glue. I just prefer the Elmer's for me. That's a personal choice. So now we're going to squeeze in a similar manner, but instead of just squishing right down the center, we're looking to pinch one edge at a time, kind of keeping it a little bit straighter on the bottom and pinching one corner. And that's going to give a kind of a half moon or like a crescent moon, I guess, type of shape. Instead of just squeezing right down the center, we just squeeze the sides. And then we're going to do the same exact thing with another strip of that same loganberry paper. If these pieces are looking a little too straight on the bottom, you can also sort of bend them over your thumbs while you're pinching the sides, and that'll really exaggerate that kind of half moon shape. In the next step, we're going to put these 3 pieces together to make one of the petals for our orchid. So to do that, you're going to just kind of stack them like a little sandwich. Using a small amount of glue, very, very thin line. You're going to go end to end on one of your crescent moon pieces, and then you're going to stack that first one that we made, and then a little bit more glue on the other end of that piece, and then stack your other crescent on top of that. And this can be a little bit tricky, this part, because it's very easy to kind of have this shoot right out of your hand because this paper is so thin. So feel free to go slow. You don't need to rush this process. But all we're doing is just running fingers down the edge and pinching the corners. Don't worry too much if one of your pieces is sticking out further than the others. We're going to kind of cover that all later, and you're not going to notice it as much. Oop. Okay, see, like I said, be careful. Don't squeeze too hard or your center will pop right out. I just did that. Luckily, I was able to save that one. I always like to keep my mistakes in so nobody worries if they make the same mistake. Mistakes happen to everybody. So leave that alone to dry. And we'll move on to the next part, which is wrapping this petal. This is where we're going to kind of hide whatever piece is maybe sticking out a little bit extra or what have you. So I'm going to take another piece of the darker loganberry color, or whatever color you chose for your outer pieces of your petal, and a very small thin amount of glue along one edge. And like I said, we're just kind of wrapping this. It just makes it a little bit more finished and a little bit more polished. So I like to put some glue on one side and then just wrap. I don't see the need to put glue around the entire piece. That's a personal preference. If you feel more comfortable doing that, by all means. And I have found that 2 wraps kind of make it a nice solid line around the outside. Tear off your excess, add a tiny bit of glue, and press that to seal. And that is all you need for one petal of the orchid. You are going to need 6 altogether, so you're going to make the other 5 in exactly the same way. Now it's time to put the flower together. First thing I'm going to do is the first layer, because this is actually going to be a 2-layered flower. A little bit of glue in sort of a tripod fashion. We're going to put a little bit on the end of 3 different petals, and then let that dry on a piece of wax paper or some other non-stick surface. The next layer is going to be just slightly different. We're going to be using tacky glue on this layer. I like to use tacky glue when I am molding flowers because it gives you the chance to have a little bit of wiggle room with your pieces as they dry. So I'm putting this layer together in the same way, and I let that dry for a little bit. I don't want it to be completely dry. I want the glue just to set up a little bit, and then I'm going to transfer it over to my upside down quilling mold. And I do have a couple other videos where I do something similar, and I also show some ways how to use a quilling mold. I'll link all that in the description box for this video. But I use the underside of the quilling mold, and I'm going to transfer it into one of the large cups, and as it dries, the petals kind of push up a little bit. And I'll show you what that looks like now. So like I said, I let it dry just a little bit and put it inside the cup here, give it a tiny press in the center, and it makes it so you have more of a domed kind of opening flower. So those are your 2 layers of your orchid. I'm going to add just another tiny bit of glue to the center here and stack them on top, kind of offset, excuse me, just like so. And I do want to mention, you could use white glue when you're doing a molded flower, but the window of time where you have between dry and too wet, where it just falls apart, is kind of tricky to deal with. So that's why I like tacky glue for that, because it'll stay together for a longer time before it's completely dry and give the opportunity to really mold your flowers and get them the way you want them to. Anyway, now we are moving on to the fringed part of this project. And this goes back to my last video where I was demonstrating a few different ways to fringe paper. And in that video, I mentioned how I generally just use a small pair of scissors and manually snip my paper very small amounts at a time. I find that works best for me, even if it takes a little bit while longer. I think I have more control that way, and it is my preference. So I have this really small piece of this pale yellow 3/8 inch paper, and all I did is just snip very small slits through about 1.5 inches or so. It's really a little bit of paper. And then I use my Savvy slotted tool again and just very gently roll this to the end. Careful not to go too fast or too roughly to rip any of my fringe. And I'm just going to open that up just a tiny bit, kind of give it a couple taps and let it loosen. And then put a little bit of glue on the edge and close that to seal. So it's just a very small little piece in the center. We're giving our flower a little bit more texture, a little bit more height. And then I also like to, once it's dry, just kind of open it up a little bit in the center. I don't want the whole thing to be completely splayed out, but just a little bit more movement to the inside. So this is like the stamen of the orchids. And then once you're happy with your fringed element, you can go ahead and put a little bit more glue on the bottom of that and put it right in the center of your orchid. That is about it for these little orchids. You can make the dome more exaggerated if you want to, obviously change up the colors. You can put these on stems. I do want to note also, even though I'm using the thin quilling strips here, you can make these with like a 1/8 inch or a 3mm paper if you wish. I do have another orchid project that I make using larger strips, they'll just be, you know, a little thicker. Nothing wrong with that. If that is what is available to you and that's what you prefer to use, that is no problem at all. Feel free to leave any questions in the comment section and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget to take a look in the description box for this video for all the supplies, and like I said, I'll leave links to other videos that you might need or find useful for these flowers. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video. Bye-bye.